Welcome to the world of tomorrow. You are about to take a journey out of this world into the world of the future.
The atomic age was born.
The world of tomorrow became the world of today,
bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millions of a second speed.
Electrical pulses transmitted with the speed of light.
Limitless power at man's command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force.
Combat Information Center is alert. Its radars probing the darkness, ready to give early warning of any unseen enemy.
But have no fear, we are monitoring the situation. Well, hello and welcome back to Monitoring the Situation, where two wild and crazy guys monitor the situation all the time.
Do you cruise and swing successfully in tight slacks, my friend?
Two wild and crazy guys. Well, there's a situation, it requires monitorization.
We are the guys.
We are the guys, those guys. We are him, as they say. Just a couple of unks trying to figure out AI because we are not Silicon Valley hype bros, but been diving deep into trying to understand and see where things are going lately. And I'm a little overwhelmed, if I'm getting honest.
I feel a little bit bad about this one because, naturally this is one of those things that you and I sort of text back and forth with each other pretty much several times a day. It's one of the big, elephants in the room. I've been after you to talk about AI sort of broadly and generally for a long time, and not necessarily because you and I come at it from different perspectives, because while I think we have temperamental differences about sort of this large topic, I think both of us are pretty serious about it, and are resistant to easy dismissals or easy kind of explanations for why, it either doesn't matter or it does matter. And so I feel a little bit bad I dumped all this on you. And of course you did what you always do, which is a massive rabbit hole dive. And I feel like I may have overwhelmed you, man.
Well, it's just, we only decided to do this episode a couple days ago because we've been doing them every other week, but I feel like there's too much going on, and so we're gonna see how we're gonna try to go back to a weekly schedule. We'll see how it goes. We both have a lot going on, and I will address the fact that I have heard that I was a floating head on a black background, and some people may have enjoyed that, but I didn't. And I wear black shirts every day because I'm autistic like that. I just have 20 of the same shirt, and that's what I wear. Partially because I'm fat and it's a little more flattering. And
is it slimming? Is it slimming?
Slightly. I mean,
slightly slimming. Okay.
Not slimming enough.
Yeah.
It's not Ozempic slimming. Let me just put it that way.
Man.
But anyway, so I also changed out my camera to the good camera that I had that I didn't have a place to set up. This is a very small apartment that I'm in here. So we're trying something new.
Hey,
for today.
And of course, I am in my many, many leather-bound books behind me.
Yeah, I can't put my books behind me because there's nowhere. It's just open space. So anyway, they're going to stay out over there. Just pretend like I have a lot of books over there that I collect but do not read.
That's right. That's right. Like many of us. Yeah.
So what I want to talk about here with this is, I know we talk about AI all the time. And if you're just getting into the show, or if you listened to it before, you may feel like this is really repetitive. So I want to imagine, just by way of analogy, that there's a gigantic asteroid coming at Earth, but it's, 3 years away. And all the astronomers are looking at it and they're pointing their telescopes at it and all this kind of stuff. And the news is talking about every day there's an asteroid coming toward Earth and it's going to potentially destroy the planet, or it's going to change everything. We really know what's going to happen. There's a small chance it'll miss altogether, but we still have to go to work, and we have to pay our bills, and we have to, deal with taxes, and we have to do all the things that normal people have to do, because 3 years is 3 years. And that's what we're dealing with AI. We know that it's coming. We know that it is the single biggest thing in the heavens right now in terms of predicting how it's, what's going to change the human race the most. Short of nuclear war, this is it. And nuclear war, I don't think it's going to happen, but I mean, this is the next biggest thing. And so to not talk about the impact that it is having across the board, and to try to understand what are our lives going to look like when the asteroid arrives, I think it's too big, it's too game changing, too paradigm shifting for us to not keep trying to hack away at this. So I apologize if it seems repetitive, but it's going to matter to you too.
Yeah, and I think one of the temptations in these kinds of conversations is that people will kind of retreat into their priors, and will spend the whole time saying why AI is evil, or the whole time saying why AI is the best thing ever. And so I hope that we can avoid those kinds of pitfalls. Yet at the same time, I think we have to talk as honestly as one can when you're dealing with a massive what if. Again, not what if in terms of something is coming. I think you're exactly right. I think that in that way the asteroid analogy works, right? But we're not entirely sure what the nature of the asteroid is going to be. And maybe your comp to a nuclear war is apt. Both of us are Gen Xers, and we both grew up, and I think younger people might not fully appreciate this, but we really did grow up with the thought that we could wake up and find ourselves in the middle of a total global catastrophe. And so that was like a real part of the way that we thought. And there was this curious moment for me. I don't know when it happened for you, but I remember being in 8th grade and reading a novel about it. It was called The Last Babylon. And the real horror show that I found in 8th grade was not what if I die in a nuclear holocaust, but what if I live? And
Yeah.
and I think the reason why I bring that up now is that, I think as you are saying this, we are going to have to live through this because it's not going to have the sort of the bells and whistles of a nuclear holocaust. It's going to be, like you said, we've got to wake up, we've got to go to school, we've got to, go to work, we have to pay our taxes, all the sort of, we have to go get groceries, we have to go do all of these things. And yet part of the threat / hype, and I don't know about you, Steve, but I oftentimes think that it's not clear whether the hype is threat or whether the threat is hype. Right? They both sort of masquerade as each other from time to time. But it's clearly already here in some very real way, right?
Well, I mean, what's interesting about the quotidian distractions from doing this, the day to day, I have to do this, I gotta schlep to make money, to put food on the table, whatever. Economically, I think a lot of people are struggling. It's not easy to make money. I'm not doing door dashing at night for fun,
Yeah, nor, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that is weighing on everybody. And at the same time, you have Elon Musk, who is really, I think, at the forefront of this, despite how much more Sam Altman and Dario Amodei are in the news. And he's saying, if you're planning on saving for retirement in 10 to 20 years, just don't bother. You're not going to need to. Because he's like, there's going to be just free stuff for everybody. The age of superabundance is coming. And we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. AI and robots are going to make it so nobody has to worry about stuff ever again. They're going to have everything they need.
And this is what Musk is laying out for us, right?
This is what Musk and others are laying out. I'm not a math guy. But okay, so let's come back to that because it's really important, but it's a little bit downstream of one of the first things I want to tackle is the question of, is it hype? because everybody who has spent any time with ChatGPT or with Claude or, to a lesser extent with Grok, I actually find Grok to be a lot more of a worthwhile experience. But just that feeling of, okay, these things are cool and they're smart and they're helpful, but they're also full of it and they make stuff up and they say things that are maddening and they go on for way too long. And I hate their little silly questions they ask at the end to keep me engaged. And I hate the patterns of speech, the not this, but that, all this kind of stuff that you begin to see when you use it more and more. And you start feeling like after a while, like maybe this is just, the new TI-85. Like if you went with a regular solar calculator and then you upgrade to a graphing calculator, like this thing, like the Apollo astronauts wish they had this thing when they went to the moon, and it's like, wow. But then after a while you get used to it and you're like, okay, it's still a calculator. It just has more functions, right? But I think it's difficult, first of all, for us to assume that as consumers, we're getting anything like the unfiltered product. I don't think that that's happening. I don't think that we understand, the layman like us understand much of anything about cost of compute. I was looking at this chart the other day and I don't have it in front of me to talk about, but it was comparing the input and output costs for compute on various models of Claude, going from the bare bones basic one that you can use all the way up to Mythos, which is the one that Anthropic is refusing to release because they say it's too dangerous. Because they put it in the sandbox and it figured out a way to break out, and it exploited vulnerabilities in software that have been there for 20 plus years. Some of the most secure software in the world, it found it immediately and was like, you can hack it, you can do this, and so they're holding on to it. But if you look at the cost of compute now, first of all, most of us don't really understand how it works. I don't really, we hear tokens. I don't really fully understand how it works, but what I do understand is everything that you ask an AI costs a certain amount of compute. And compute, I assume, is the cost of electricity and the GPU and, all the little exchanges that go on that create an economic transaction because you have used a certain amount of energy and resources to accomplish a task, right? So compute there's probably a formula of multiply this times that. I don't know what it is. I don't think anybody cares.
And so just real quick. So in other words, the cost of compute, look, what do I know, right? I fire up ChatGPT on my phone and I type some words into it, or I speak some words into it. I hit the arrow button and anywhere between 3 and 10 seconds, some huge amount of text gets spit at me. So that's what I know about AI, right? The LLM. So why is this different in terms of cost of compute than something like Google, like a Google search back in the day?
My assumption is that it is because the model is processing what you're saying, coming up with context. It is probabilistically generating an answer that it thinks will be relevant. It's probably doing some search on its own, whether through its own data set or if it's hooked up to the internet, it's doing it online.
That's what Grok will tell you, right? Grok, tell you, searching da-da-da, so, just quick.
Right, and Grok, well, this reason I like Grok is because it gives you a lot of sources without you having to ask. You can click the links, you can check things for yourself. ChatGPT goes back and forth between, I can access the internet, no, I can't. I can do it, no, I can't. Like, I never know what ChatGPT is.
So anyway, the larger point you're making here is that it actually costs something, even though I have the free version of Chat on my phone or the free version of Grok on my phone. It doesn't cost me anything, right? In terms of, I don't have to give them my credit card, but it's costing something.
Right. So there's a certain number of cents or dollars for both input and output. So when you type something in and you're like, give me the best coffee shops in Raleigh. I want to go visit some new coffee shops. Processing that is called input. The answer that it gives you is output. So input is less expensive. Output is more expensive, and consistently across all these models, that at least the ones that were in the Claude chart, it's a factor of 5. So input is 5 times less expensive than output, right? So on the basic models, you're talking nothing, like really low cost, pennies per ask. You get up to Mythos, and it's going like $25 per input to $125 per output or
Wow.
something. It's crazy high.
Wow.
I saw somebody, and they were probably BSing, but they said, I used Mythos for 12 hours, and this was my bill, and it was $125,000.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So
half it, and it's still
right.
crazy.
And so where does the cost of compute come from? Well, it comes from the electricity that has to be used, and it comes from the data centers, and it comes from all these different things. Like the higher complexity models that are running more parameters are just using more resources, right? Now, the limiting factors right now with the expansion of AI, and the thing that's probably one of the things that is probably keeping us from seeing the game-changing stuff that the people who work at these companies are quitting over and freaking out over, is there are two limiting factors. One is chips. They can't make microchips fast enough for all the requests. And, you see this with other hardware too. The data centers are eating up RAM. They're eating up hard drives. Like I ended up buying a couple of spare hard drives earlier this year that I couldn't really afford, because Western Digital announced in January that they had sold out their entire production run for 2026 already to the data centers. And I have a couple of older hard drives that are near but not at the end of their lifespan. And I'm like, I don't need to spend $1,000 on a hard drive, 6 months from now when it's $100 now.
Yeah, totally.
And so I bought a couple of them just in case. And same thing with RAM. Like I had just upgraded the RAM on my laptop before it exploded. And what was $70 was now like $1,200, right?
That's
so
insane. Yeah,
these supply chain constrictions have ripple effects throughout the whole market. I mean, you just want to make your computer work so that you can do the stuff that you do, but you can't buy that stuff because the AI companies are buying it all. So the chips are a big thing. But ironically, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, biggest manufacturer of advanced microchips in the world. We're moving, because of the threat to Taiwan from China, we're moving a lot of their production capacity to the United States. I used to live in Phoenix, as most people know. They're building it was initially a $40 billion facility.
Wow.
I believe that it has since gone up, and they are expanding it even more.
Yeah.
This thing is like a city. Like when you drive by, you cannot believe how big these buildings are, right?
Yeah.
Because chips are everything. But at the same time, TSMC is not optimistic, or at least they weren't at the end of last year. I don't know if anything's changed.
Yeah.
About producing the amount of chips that they potentially could, because they don't think there's enough electricity to turn them all on. And then they're going to be stuck with a bunch of extra chips that nobody can use. So there's this toggle back and forth between, we need enough power to run all these chips, but we need enough chips so that we can do the next level of stuff.
So it reminds me, 20 years ago, people were losing their minds over what people called peak oil, right? And I remember going down the peak oil rabbit hole for a bit, and like really being convinced that, oh man, this is like really bad. And so the thought of having, parking lots full of, Ford F-150s with, beautiful brand new cars, but there's nothing to run them on. And of course, peak oil turned out to be not true. That's because for a number of different reasons. But just the thought experiment of having all of these computers, all of these chips, all of these things, and literally not enough to just plug it in and run it. That's really hard. I mean, it's such a simple point, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's something. So, as part of the preparation that I did for this, probably the biggest part that I did, I listened to two very long podcasts that Elon Musk did. One was with Peter Diamandis and Dave Blunden. It's called the Moonshots Podcast. That was done either January or December of last year. January of this year or December of last year. The other one was called the Dwarkesh Podcast, which I don't really know who these guys are, but I'm starting to see them around more often.
Yeah, same. I'm starting to see them around too.
That was done in February of 2026. And so in these two podcasts, the big focus is, like, what are we going to see happen with all of this stuff in the next few years? What Elon comes back to again and again is that he his unique approach to problem solving, and the reason why he's done as much as he has, is that where other people work around the limiting factor, he attacks it directly.
Yeah.
He actually looks for the hardest problem and says, how do we solve that? Instead of focusing on all this peripheral stuff, let's go right at the jugular. What is the thing that's stopping us from getting to the next level, from iterating fast enough, right?
Right.
And he's done this across every industry that he has run, from electric cars to SpaceX. And, you know, what's interesting about him is he has this quote where he says in the Diamondis podcast, the Moonshots podcast, he said that it is better to be an optimist and be wrong than be a pessimist and be right. And he said, I was very pessimistic about AI for years. Everybody knows that I was telling everybody, hey, maybe we should slow this down because it could be the end of all of us. He said, but I got to a point where I had to become fatalistic, and look for the bright side.
Okay.
He said, because nobody wanted to stop. And so I thought, I can watch this from the sidelines and hope for the best, or I can become a participant and try to steer it in the right direction. And what is very interesting about that decision for him in particular is, and what I don't know if even he knew, maybe he did, because he has a great deal of foresight. And I see that watching these older interviews and then seeing what's happened since.
Yeah.
Is that AI is going to move to space, and it's going to move us towards space in a way that we have never done before. And this is really game-changing stuff. I mean, it sounds crazy, but he says that AI will be moving to space in the next 30 to 36 months, full stop. This is not a hype. This is not an over-exaggeration. It will be exponentially cheaper to have AI running in space than it will be to have it on Earth. And they are targeting through SpaceX, which, you know, lucky him, he has a space company,
Right.
and nobody else does in this sector. They're targeting 1 million tons of payload to orbit in order to make this happen. That means 10,000 launches a year. That's 27 launches a day.
Wait, how many launches a day?
27
Holy
launches
smokes.
a day.
Yeah. Wow.
365.
That's crazy. That's a lot. Okay, people.
I mean, imagine what that would cost. And so to go back to the question of, is this hype or is it not? Last year, the tech companies invested $400 billion in AI infrastructure. In inflationary terms, that's 9 times what went into the Manhattan Project.
That adjusted for inflation.
Adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
So we're talking, everybody is going all in. That was just last year. This year, it's going to be more. You think about what 27 space flights a day is. Like, what does it cost just in fuel?
Right. You know, I too have been kind of listening around about this topic, not just because you had said, hey, let's do this thing, but just because I'm interested in it. And I was listening to sort of a kind of a classic, tech bro podcast. It's called the All In Podcast with, Calacanis, Sachs, a couple of
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, right? And they're all friends with Elon. And I listened to them talk about it on their podcast, and each one of them said some version of, I know it sounds crazy. I sat down with Elon. He walked me through the X, Y, and Z, and the maths. Those are my words, right? But the maths, and then they all said another version of, you can bet on Elon, right? And these guys are, they're well, as the podcast title suggests, they're all in, right? Now, of course, one must always hold out, so that raised eyebrow, that sort of sly raised eyebrow, is this part of things. But it honestly struck me as honest, in so far as they are going to get behind this. What is it? They're going to get behind this horse, And Elon is such a fascinating character. And I tell you what, it's hard to tell, number one, like who he is or what he is. And, I kind of like him and I kind of hate him. Like it's this
Right.
interesting
Yeah.
combination, and again, full disclosure.
But you would never bet against him.
No, in full disclosure, like I can't stand Sam Altman. Every time,
No.
I mean, it's like 13
That guy sets off something in your reptilian brain.
I mean, it really does, Steve. I mean, I start like, looking to like put children behind me and like cover up my wallet.
Seriously,
and,
he's the creepiest guy.
Oh, I'm just telling you, and everything, and nothing that I've heard has sort of talked me off of that. And again, I want to be very clear here with the audience. I have deep reservations about Elon Musk, like as a philosopher and as a thinker, but as an engineer, I really think we have to put him in the register of an Edison or a Tesla, which is no surprise because he named one of his breakthrough companies after Nikola Tesla. Now, and just think of the three. I mean, these three things alone are just crazy nuts, right? SpaceX, that's insane, right? Tesla, that's insane. To have an entire grid cover, the United States of America, in which you could drive an electric car from place to place to place, and it
Remember
works.
too that the revolution of Tesla is not just electric cars. It's electric cars with enough onboard compute that they can drive themselves without your intervention.
Right.
Nobody had come up with that
Close to that.
without advanced LiDAR systems. He's doing it with cameras and AI.
Right. And then thirdly, Earthlink. Right.
Starlink.
Starlink.
Yeah.
Sorry. Starlink, which is like Earthlink. Anyway, Earthlink was the stupid
It's just the other
that
side of Starlink.
Earthlink was the stupid dial-up thing I had back in,
that's why, because I remembered that name and I'm like, wait,
Earthlink, right? So anyway, those three things alone, if you take them individually, you sort of like, man, that's pretty impressive, and then you sort of put them together and you're like, oh, wait. And then you throw Grok into this and you're like, oh, wait, he's kind of doing this all-encompassing, star-grabbing thing.
Don't forget the Boring Company, which he barely even talks about. They're digging tunnels under cities.
What?
They're
what are you talking about? I've never heard this.
It's called the Boring Company.
Literally?
Boring,
but it's
boring.
It's both boring and boring.
Right.
It's boring and
they
boring.
literally like Mole Man boring. And like right now, I forget which city it is that just won a contest to get a free tunnel dug under their city, like to connect a commuter loop of some kind, and they're using it for promotion. But I think they did one in Vegas. Like they're digging tunnels under the ground. Like he barely even talks about that one.
So, audience, pay attention to that one, right? You and I, Steve, have oftentimes talked about watching off the ball. And so this is why I want to bring up Elon as a phenomena too, right? And I'll let you keep going with the AI thing. But when you're asking questions about hype, I can't help but think that Elon is also like a stage character. Like it's a shtick on some level. He's a larger than life figure, right? And one of the issues with him that really hurt him, at least that's how I initially framed it, was he went all in behind Trump, right? And he did that. And I think he went a long way toward helping Trump get reelected, for his second.
Yeah, we can't take the purchase of Twitter off the board.
Right, and then that's really like the fifth thing, right? That's freaking huge, right? Okay, and 100%. But he got really close to the president. He was doing this Doge thing and all of that, and he was just getting destroyed over this, right? Just in terms of public, public relations, popularity standpoint. And so I think he savvily sort of in a savvy fashion kind of steps away from this sort of wacky persona. He's always carrying his little boy with him and Trump. They're walking on the White House lawn and getting in and out of Air Force Two and, all these kinds of things. Right. And So he steps back, and it really kind of is at that point that all of these pieces come into my salience hierarchy in such a way that I'm like, okay, wait, he's doing something more. Right. So, I mean, the fact that he is a major player in this business, it would be stupid not to pay attention to what he's doing.
I mean, he basically tried to take his approach of attacking the limiting factor. That is his core ethos, is attack the limiting factor.
Limiting factor. Yeah. There it is.
And he tried to apply it to government. And what he learned is that good faith effort is not rewarded at certain levels of public, whatever. And he did talk about this on the Dwarkesh podcast, and about how politics is crazy. He's like, we uncovered the fraud, but we couldn't get rid of it because people just made stuff up about why it had to keep going, and they lied, and they came up with very sympathetic stories, and then they started smearing us in the media and doing all this stuff. I think he really, really felt burned by the fact of, you can't take, it's something you said earlier, is philosopher versus engineer. I think he's just engineer.
Yeah.
Even his approach to philosophy is an engineering approach.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And that's one of the ways that we have to look at him. So I think he looked at this as, I'm trying to do a good thing. Who doesn't want to get rid of fraud? Who doesn't want their tax money to not be wasted? Let's go in. Let's attack the limiting factor. Let's get rid of all this waste.
It's like, right, guys?
And
like,
he
here we
found
go.
out,
Good, right,
he
guys?
found out that people are irrational and they don't want this. And, if you're invested in fraud, you're going to fight it tooth and nail, and powerful people will lie about you. And then people will put bumper stickers on their Teslas saying, I'm in this for the emissions, not for Elon.
Or I bought it before oh my gosh.
Yeah. And all this crap. Like, imagine seeing that when you created this thing that these people loved.
Yeah.
And they hate you now because what did you do? You tried to get rid of trillions of dollars worth of fraud and waste.
Right, but instead we get the three-ring circus of so-called Nazi salutes and all this frankly ridiculous baby mamas.
And I think that what we got on the other side of this is a little bit more dark Elon.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I like that. Right,
like
what
that
do you mean by dark Elon?
That childlike kind of stereotypically autistic. Enthusiasm and optimism and giddiness that he had, it has subsided substantially since he was involved with everything with the government, right?
Yeah, that's good.
And
that's right. That's
he
a good
and
point.
Trump have kind of patched things up, and
yeah.
I think even Trump realizes he can't afford to alienate somebody like Musk. But there's just this harder edge to him now, and I think his determination is much stronger. And it's something interesting because Peter Diamond has said to him on the Moonshots podcast, he's like, I've known you for 26 years, but I feel like in the last 10 years, you've gotten a lot smarter. Like, you've gotten a lot more capable at solving problems and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it's not something you usually hear about a guy at middle age, that like, he's not declining. He's getting better. But I think part of that may have to do with alterations in priorities and focus. I mean, look, he was talking about going to Mars nonstop a year or two ago. Now all he's talking about is getting AI into space, harnessing the sun's energy to create, the fuel for these robots that are going to provide all this abundance, building a moon base. Like, I don't think he's given up on Mars, but he basically just pushed that back and was like, no, right now, this is where everything is going. And for a man like that, with such a singular devotion to a cause, to kind of reprioritize in this way, that is also something I think we should be paying attention to, because he is singularly minded in terms of whatever he sets out to get done happens, unless it's in government, and
right.
nobody can cure the government. But
well, I mean, that great, is the government actually a problem too big to solve, even for Elon Musk? I mean, I think that
the answer seems to be yes.
Yeah, that has to be an essay that's written, because this is and again, look, I know that ultimately governance is different from running businesses and companies, but there's a sort of a base level competency that is required, and I would think that somebody like, Elon Musk sort of qualifies in that regard to be able to solve some problems. Again, not going to him for my political philosophy or my sense of what the good is or anything like that, but just in terms of, having a working model, he's like as good as any to solve that particular problem, but not government. It's very telling to me.
Yeah. So I think, to return to what we're trying to get our arms around here, which is, I mean, if I'm going to put it in very specific terms, I think what we're trying to figure out is, what is the world going to look like in 5 years? I don't think anybody can predict what it will look like in 10. This is how short I think the timeline is. 5 years is actually a little long. I mean, we're talking data centers in space in 30 to 36 months. We're talking about, he says, these problems, these limiting factors of chips and of electricity. Chips, he's decided he's going to solve by building terafab. And if you're not familiar with that,
that's number 6. Okay, just so we're keeping score at home, that's the 6th of these like major things.
It is under the auspices of Tesla.
Okay.
And or XAI.
Okay, go ahead, explain it to us. I don't know what you're talking about.
So, if you don't know what a fab is, the way that, TSMC that we talked about earlier makes these chips is this very high-end production facility where everybody wears spacesuits because it's got to be clean, because they're literally manipulating atoms. They are building things at the atomic level. Like I didn't know this. He was talking about how we talk about these chips that are 3 nanometers or 2 nanometers. He's like, it doesn't really mean anything because there are only so many atoms you can fit at this scale. He said, for example, like a 2 nanometer chip should just be called a 9 silicon atom chip, because that's how many atoms we can fit on 2 nanometer scale is 9 silicon atoms back to back, because they're kind of large atoms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know anything about any of this stuff, but I'll take your word for it,
Right.
But we're manipulating physical things at the level of the substrate of the universe here.
So can I ask you a question about that, Steve? So you told me years ago, this is when you were still out in Phoenix, and you were talking about this thing that they're making, because only Taiwan knows how to make these things. It's
not so much that only they know how, it's that they specialized in it early.
Okay.
We design the chips here in the United States,
right,
and then they build them, and that was a partnership that we created.
Yeah, so that's cool. Like, oh, that's great. But as we all recall, with the thing that shan't be named in 2020, like all of a sudden, what gets exposed is just the utter fragility
of the supply
and
chain,
the brittle quality of the supply chain.
Yeah.
And I remember, so you and I having this conversation, like, wait. You mean to tell me that a small isolated island off of the coast of a maniacal, tyrannical, super government in China is just right there, and they have said over and over and over again, like, we want that island, it's our island,
right?
And we just are going to have all of that made there. Like,
right.
Maybe we should. I mean, it's just shocking to me in retrospect. It sounds to me like they have some kind of plans to move this level of expert construction, fabrication, elsewhere, not on this small isolated island in Taiwan. But it really is remarkable, talk about high trust globalism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and at least for a while, we were hearing that China doesn't have the technical capacity to make these chips, that even if they took over Taiwan, they don't know how.
Yeah.
But Elon says that China is going to outpace us very quickly on chip manufacturing. And I think that's one of the things that he's keeping in mind. He doesn't believe that, one of the things that he keeps having to do is he has to solve problems for which there is no turnkey solution.
Okay.
So, for example, they start building the Optimus robots, right? There's no supply chain for any of the parts that they need, because they're all unique parts that they've designed. So they have to create manufacturing for the parts so they can build the robot.
Right. So I can go to AutoZone or O'Reilly's or, fill in the blank, Walmart, and buy parts for my Toyota because the supply, it's all out there, right? There are parts for these things. It's an existing thing. There's no such thing as, can you go on Amazon and get me a robot pinky? I'm out of robot pinkies. That's what it should be. RoboZone. That'll be the name of our Radio Shack. So anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, so what he keeps having to do is come up with ways to make the stuff that he can't get on the open market. One of the things that, the data centers use huge amounts of power. It's difficult to get the power. To run utilities to something like that means that you've got to get a survey from the utility companies, and it takes like a year and all this permitting. And so they start building their own gas turbines. But he's like, well, we can't get the blades for the gas turbines because there's a backlog on them that's like 3 years long. And there's a very specific casting process, and there's only a couple places in the world that make them, and everybody wants them. The world is industrializing where it isn't already, and there's aging power plant infrastructure everywhere. And so like transformers, these large transformers that weigh 200,000 tons or whatever, they're huge. Like they can't even transport them on normal vehicles. Like they have to have special trucks built for them and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You can't get one of those. They're 2 years out, and I think they're only built in Korea and one other place, And so people don't realize these limiting factors are everywhere. So what he keeps doing is saying, how do I go around the limiting factor? Or how do I run through the limiting factor? Is actually what he does. So he's like, well, we'll make this and we'll make that, and we'll make our own power plants. We'll make our own turbines. We'll do whatever, And I think what the conclusion is that he's come to is, I can't solve the chip shortage problem while relying on NVIDIA and TSMC and all these other people.
Yeah.
So we're going to start making them ourselves. And on top of that, I think that the current process is ridiculous and inefficient. He's like, I should be able to eat a cheeseburger and smoke a cigar while I'm in the fab. Nobody should have to be wearing these clean room suits and all this kind of stuff.
Who can work in these conditions, Steve? Who can work? If I can't have my cheeseburger and my soda and smoking my Marlboro Red while I'm making a 9-atom nano whatever. Come on, this is cruel and unusual.
But what's funny is, it's a great image, in terms of like, we can't have any grease molecules, touching the chips, whatever. But he does it to make the point of, imagine working with a freaking spacesuit on every day. Imagine how annoying that is, right?
Yeah.
Like just being able to go in and work because the wafers are kept separate. And, he says they keep them in boxes full of nitrogen gas. So nitrogen gas kills any organic compounds, all this kind of stuff. Like he's like, there are ways that we can isolate the production line and keep it separate from where the people are, and da-da-da. So he's building this thing. The initial investment into Terafab, which is his own in-house make the microchips ourselves plan, is 20 to 25 billion, but they're saying that by the time the project is complete, it could go into the trillions. And I believe the initial targeting numbers are 100,000 chips per year, but they're scaling up to like 100 million. So we're talking about astronomical numbers, right? So there's that. Go ahead.
Yeah, which then, of course, triggers what you had said earlier. You've got this massive amount more, which needs energy for this massive amount more to run.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, he's asked on one of these podcasts, well, what do you think about fusion reactors? And he goes, wait till you find out how the sun works. It's just a big fusion reactor. He's like, why are we investing in creating small fusion reactors on Earth when we have 99% of all the mass in the universe up there as a gigantic fusion reactor producing free energy that's just spilling into the void? It's going nowhere. He says, if we could harness 1/1,000,000th of the sun's power, he's like, that seems like a reasonably small number, right? It's like 100,000 times more than all the electricity generated for entire civilization per year.
Wow.
So it's just astronomical numbers of the sun is giving us a ton of free energy, and we can convert that free energy into compute, into robot power, into all this other stuff.
Teslas.
Yeah.
Etc.
And what it'll do is it will bring the cost of everything down. So AI, he's like, we're going to put solar satellites out there with AI chips in them, where the sun never, there's no nighttime in space. So you don't need batteries to store the electricity during the night cycle. There's no weather in space, so you don't have to reinforce them against wind, and you don't have to clean them after rain and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, of
course.
course.
They will always be accessing a steady stream of power, and then that goes to the data centers. The data centers will have different cooling requirements, but you're not going to have to pump liquid into space. Space is cold. They have to have different radiator systems. The chips have to run a little bit hotter initially, but they'll be able to dump excess heat into space. They've got all these ways of doing this stuff. He says right off the bat, it's going to be 5 times cheaper to run AI in space than on Earth, even with the cost of getting all the stuff up to orbit.
Up there. That's amazing. That really is. That's just.
And he's like, and from there, it's going to keep getting cheaper. And his next plan, next plan is, we start launching 1 million tons to orbit from Earth, but then we build a moon base and we create a mass driver and we build the stuff on the moon out of, the regolith, and because they can actually there's a lot of usable minerals in the regolith.
Yeah, I was just listening to that today. Yeah.
And he's like, and we just basically stick them in the mass driver, which is basically like a rail gun. And we just launch the satellites
amazing
all day long at the sun.
And there's no atmosphere. So you basically have a short rail track, a few meters long, and you launch it at a slight angle, and it just drifts right off into.
I think it has to be kind of long in order to attain the velocity to get to where it needs to go. But I don't know how long it needs.
Long, like the size of a runway.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard kilometers long, but I don't know. But the moon's pretty big.
Yeah.
So we'll see. A lot of this stuff remains in the realm of hypothetical, but we're on the way to figuring it out. So there's not a lot of numbers around this stuff, but.
So just to connect this for the audience, what is this doing potentially for Elon? And really what we're asking is this sort of larger question about AI. Like, what is all of that? What is that solving for AI? Just to make sure I'm clear on this.
So right now, the amount and the cost of compute is limited by electricity. And we're hearing about this all over the country, right? Your electric bill is going up because data centers are using too much.
Yeah.
He's generating early on a terawatt of electricity from solar. The United States uses 0.5 terawatt per year.
And we are by far the largest consumer.
Well, maybe China.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I know China's about to outproduce us in electricity, so I assume there's consumption demand for that, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, that's fine, but it's close. Whatever, it's close.
Yeah. So being able to produce more electricity in space for AI data centers than we're already producing for everything here soon, within the next 5 years. Imagine that. It sounds like science fiction. Like, how can that even happen? But he is resolute that this is not only possible, it's happening. He's not talking in speculative terms. So, what that means for jobs, for industry, for, all this stuff. And so then the secondary layer to this is that bottleneck being removed. AI is going to continue to develop and to iterate. One of the things that he says that I don't, again, fully understand, he says that the knowledge density on the current AI systems could be increased a significant amount using the same chips, the same computers. He's like, we just have to change, the models, and we can actually get a lot more information density out of it. So they'll be capable of doing more on the same hardware.
Because they're learning how to run it more efficiently, or
I think so. I think that's what it is. Again, these long, wide-ranging podcasts where they get only, you wish you could ask questions. You're like, I want to follow it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the way in which I remember, talking to a gearhead friend of mine. He's a real, car guy. And he was explaining to me, because I was saying one time, like, God, like when I was a kid, if you wanted a muscle car, it had to be a V8, right? It had to be a V8. And now,
turbocharged V4s and
we've
stuff
got
like that.
V4s that house, a standard issue V8, just from dealing with tolerances and efficiencies and all of that. So, diesel engines, the same kind of thing, so that you can actually, there's a lot of like low hanging fruit.
You just re-engineer stuff and make it work better. And AI will continue to be part of the iteration process.
Right. And that's part of that recursive quality of AI, that it can actually increase efficiencies when we're talking about material, things, etc.
Now, Elon says we hit AGI this year. And AGI, for those who aren't familiar, it's artificial general intelligence, which means that basically AI can do anything that people can do. They have the same cognitive capability. It's considered kind of like a lower holy grail over ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, where AI can exceed human capacity in every arena. Those are my understandings of the terms. I'm open to correction, if anybody has that. But so AGI, though, is kind of the benchmark for this is where everything begins to change, right? Because now they can do all this stuff. He says it has gotten to the point where it will be trivial for AI to do math beyond anything humans can do, like within the next 1 to 2 years. We're not fully there yet, but he's like, it's going to crush math, and then physics is next.
Right.
So you think about the fact that there's this built in to this curve that is already parabolic. We can't predict how much AI is going to contribute to the speed of the development of the next thing, and then the next thing, and it compounds. And there's this phrase that he uses where I wish I could remember exactly what it is, something about it, being triple exponential. When it comes to like the robots, it's the dexterity, it's this, it's that, and then you multiply all those things times each other. So the robots are the thing that almost nobody's talking about.
I know.
Right?
And I'm struck by that because, at least imaginatively, Steve, that just makes so much sense to me. Right. And again, audience, please hear me. I'm not like, yay, robots. And that's not where I'm coming from. It doesn't matter what my personal opinion about a robot is, but it just seems to make such intuitive sense that that's where this is going to go. I hate this word, obviously.
I mean, to give perspective. So, robots obviously being paired with AI. I mean, there's a certain amount of AI that's getting paired with the cars, right? The Teslas.
Yeah.
And he actually has said it doesn't make sense to put too much compute into the cars, because then they're going to be like, why did you put this into a car? Like, what am I doing? Like, I can't do that much. I can just drive around.
Yeah.
But the robots are going to be used to do all kinds of labor, including building more robots.
Right.
And so to look at the timeline on this, Peter Diamandis is actually a physician. He's a doctor, right? And so they're talking about the future of medicine with AI and everything. And he's like, Diamandis is talking to him about like surgeons, and it's really expensive and it takes a really long time to train a human surgeon. Yeah. Elon says within 3, he's like, I'll be generous and say 4 years. Optimus robots will be performing surgery better than any human surgeon possibly could at scale. So it's not going to be, where, like, let's imagine that you're some famous surgeon, right? And you work at, whatever, Boston Children's Hospital or something, doing pediatric surgeries or whatever. That knowledge, plus the knowledge of every other guy at every other major medical institution, is going to be in these things, and they're going to have thousands of them. They're going to be in Africa. They're going to be at clinics in the third world. They're going to be everywhere.
And it's instantaneous at that point, because the knowledge and quote unquote know-how are transferable.
It's shared. It's all shared
right away. Yeah. I don't know. Have you ever seen one of those videos where they have a robot suture a kernel of corn that's on the cob?
No.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane, Steve. I mean, it's like, they kind of just sort of hyper zoom in. It's got these two little things, and it's like, it's suturing a kernel of corn on a cob.
Wow.
I mean, it's, okay.
Yeah. But like, Elon gives a very relatable example.
Mm-hmm.
He says, okay, I'll come back to the relatable example. So, Diamandis is talking about this with him, and, the first thing he says is, so should people keep going to medical school?
Yeah.
And Elon immediately goes, no, it's pointless.
Wow.
He's like, actually, all higher education is pointless unless you're going for the social experience, because it's not going to, again, engineer, not philosopher, but there's no practical benefit because you're not going to be doing that work. And, he made clear, he's like, the white collar jobs are going to go first, but the physical jobs are coming. I mean, imagine if a robot is capable of doing a surgery, it's capable of fixing your plumbing. It's capable of, fixing your HVAC system.
Okay,
it's capable of whatever.
So tell me this, is that true?
It should be. I mean, it doesn't require more manual dexterity to do that than it does to, do open heart surgery or whatever else.
Suture a corn kernel.
Yeah,
by the way,
and
I just
ahead.
sent it to you, by the way.
Okay.
Watch it on your own time. But
Well, I might throw it in. I might edit it in just so that people can watch. But Diamandis, points out that there are a lot of limiting factors for humans when it comes to surgery. Like, did you get enough sleep last night? Did you have too much caffeine? Did you have a fight with your spouse before you came into work?
Right.
He said the number one question that people ask a surgeon, how many times did you perform this procedure today? Not in general, like in the last 24 hours, because they want to see experience.
Yeah.
But that retention of experience and the lack of any environmental change to your capacity is something robots can do that people can. So, one of the people asks, well, what about people who, still want that human touch? They want a human doctor.
Sure.
And Elon's okay. Maybe they'll want that for a little while. He's like, but LASIK. He's like, there's a robot lasering your eyeball. He's like, I don't want the best ophthalmologist in the world with a freaking hand laser lasering my eyeball. I want the robot to do it because I know it's not going to mess it up.
My dad just went and got his cataracts removed, one and then the other, a couple of weeks later. And number one, he now sees better than 20/20. My father is 85 years old, but the surgeon is a friend of the family's, and he is essentially a kind of super duper high end technician. He'll tell you this, right? He operates on eyes every day. Does 35 a day or whatever it is he does, maybe more now that I think about it. And, he's this high-end technician. He's already working, he's a version of a kind of a transhumanist doctor, if, in quotation marks there. He's already doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so these relatable examples give us sort of an entree into this seemingly impenetrable, like, is this really all going to happen? It's like, yeah, obviously. Like, we can look at these examples and say, if you can have that for your knee surgery or for your hip surgery or for your heart surgery or whatever else, of course you're going to opt for the highest probable outcome of success when it comes to those kinds of things. And Elon's basically put it in these terms. He says that, in a few years, everyone will have access to healthcare that is greater than that is given to the president of the United States today. It's just going to happen. And so, they're going to ramp up the building of these robots. And at first, it's going to be minimal. I mean, they're finishing. He says the hardest thing by far has been the hand.
Right, of course.
Because the dexterity, the movement of the hand is an incredibly complex machine. And they're making human hands on these things because then they can do the same things we can do.
Right.
But they're going to, start out with a limited production run. Then they're going to go up to 1 million units a year. Then it's going to keep compounding. And as he puts it, Optimus will begin building the other Optimus. It's like you'll have robots building other robots.
Right.
And so it's just going to keep compounding. The number that's crazy, guess how many robots he's saying there's going to be in 2040?
So 2040, so that's what? That's 15 years, thereabouts, 15 and a half years from now? I don't know. How many people are on the planet?
I believe right now we're somewhere in the 7 to 8 billion range.
So again, I don't know this, but just knowing Elon, like that number?
10 billion. 10 billion, and he says that the number is actually probably low.
Wow. What?
And again, he says the limiting factor is literally just moving atoms around. It's metal, it's lithium, it's but they're gonna be in space. They're gonna mine asteroids. They're gonna have access to basically unlimited resources. And so this is what this idea of a future of AI and robot-driven hyperabundance is predicated upon. Is the universe is giving us all this free shit. And we can take it and use it to create a deflationary cycle where the goods and services provided scale exponentially faster than the monetary supply. So everything becomes crazy cheap and basically gets to a point where everything is free and people don't have to work anymore.
Okay.
Because the robots will make all the stuff. He says that the robots will literally run out of things to do for humans very, very quickly because the entire scale of human desire cannot outstrip their capacity to produce.
So this is where my mind kind of shuts down.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay, it does. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better, Steve.
I mean, I've been gnawing at this for a while,
Well,
so
no,
I
I
have
know.
something, but
yeah, that's why I'm noodling at this a little bit more. I mean, you're talking about a change. You know, we're not talking about going from a gas car, a fleet of cars, to an electric fleet of cars. You know, in terms of an idea, you're talking about like something wholly different. It sounds to me.
yeah, yes,
In terms of like just the organization and structure of
world.
civilization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and nobody knows how exactly it's going to play out.
Right.
Elon is, and others are convinced this is where it's going, but the specifics of how to make it work still needs to be engineered. And of course, they say AI will help to figure that out.
Right. It's like another.
It's like a perpetual motion machine.
Yeah.
Or something. Like it's this
It's
thing that,
yeah. Okay.
like, you know, reminds me of Homer Simpson saying, alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. You know, it's like AI, just sub in AI.
Yeah.
But so the way that the metaphor that my brain landed on when I went around and around and around this idea of how do you get to a world of free stuff built and produced by robots where people have abundance and they don't need anything. Like I just couldn't get it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with Grok, actually, because I was like, explain this to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't like philosophically, ontologically, I just couldn't. And then the image of photosynthesis popped.
Oh, okay. Say more. This is intriguing.
Think about plants, right? They don't do anything. They suck up water, they take in carbon dioxide, and they grab sunlight and they turn it into food and oxygen. They turn it into simple sugars and oxygen, right? It's this alchemical process that we don't fully understand, but the biggest input is the energy from the sun.
Right.
So you're getting, you know, there's no supply chain for trees.
Right.
There's nothing.
Not in the way that we're talking about.
Right. They exist, they get the stuff that they need, and they make more stuff out of that is useful, right? I'm looking at this as a kind of machine photosynthesis.
Wow.
Where the robots are harvesting things from the universe. The sun is going through solar. They're harvesting minerals from asteroids or from whatever.
To make more of them.
Make more of them.
Yeah.
But their biggest cost is the electricity, and the electricity is free.
Right.
So that is the thing. It's not. It's like an infinite money hack, but the money is energy, and so that is the greatest resources. It's going to the robots, and the robots are making the stuff, and then they're making themselves, and they're harnessing whatever is available in this infinite universe of ours to get more and more and more stuff. Like we could never use all the stuff that is available, all the resources that are out there. They just weren't accessible to us. But you're going to have robots in space. They're going to be everywhere. They're going to be the things on the ships first to a lot of places. And they're going to exploit the natural resources, and they're going to bring them back for the benefit of humanity, right? And so that is why, allegedly, right? But I mean, you know, imagine there's a treasure planet, you know, if we're still operating on a money paradigm.
Yeah, that's fine.
And you could just go grab gold and jewels and all this stuff and bring it back. And now everybody's got tons of money. The money is energy. The money is minerals. That's what it is.
So I don't know if you remember this, but in C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, you know, the Ransom trilogy, the Cosmic trilogy, whatever you want to call it. I like the Cosmic one, but that's fine. Right. I don't know if you remember this, because I know it's been some years since you read it. I just taught it this past fall. Vine and Weston kidnap Ransom, and they go to Paralandra, and Paralandra, which I think is Venus. No, it's Mars.
Remember?
Oh, geez, this is ridiculous.
I feel like it was Venus.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the whole green hue of everything, like I feel
I'm outing myself as well, I'm a bad teacher. But anyway, the point is that what they have in Paralandra is gold, and it's just there. It's like it's in the water. It's like you just
Just
grab
lying
it like
around
it's
because
grass.
nobody's grabbed it yet. Yeah.
Right. And of course the locals have no use for it as such, except, you know, the piffle-triggy use it for some of their instrumentation.
Wait, are you talking about Malacandra, not Paralandra?
Correct. Sorry. Malacandra.
Yeah, because
that's right.
Paralandra, there's just one person there.
Right. So that's Venus. Malacandra is Mars, right? So they go to Malacandra because it's just like, it's all there. And it's all there. And so their plan, of course, is to go and grab it, as much of it as they can, and go back to Earth, and, you know, they'll live like kings. But Weston, of course, wants to use it for, his for the pushing forward of the financing of his science, of course.
Right. But basically, yes. I mean, that's the thing, is there is free stuff out there, and the robots don't need money. They don't need love. They just need electricity.
Yeah.
And the ability to maintain themselves by harvesting more resources, right? So what you wind up with is a super abundance of stuff that people need at virtually no cost.
And this is pretty mind-blowing stuff, Steve. You know, I mean, my day job, when I'm not monitoring this particular situation, you know, I teach poetry and lit and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I coach golf. You sort of went on this assignment the last, you know, week. And again, we pay attention to this stuff anyway.
Right.
So you've thrown yourself down down all of this, right? We keep using rabbit hole, poor rabbits, right? Anyway, part of you must sort of be like, is anybody paying attention to this?
Yes,
Like,
that is exactly how I feel.
Right. Okay. Well, say a little more. Like, wow, like I'm just hearing you say this, and again, I'm a little familiar with it. You know, we share our research back and forth, and I've done some of my deep dives. But boy, it's like, and what are we talking about? Like, we're arguing about like really silly stuff,
right?
You know, like stupid memes on the internet. Like, which,
well, look,
fair enough,
I'm used to this because of my interest in the UFO topic.
Right. Okay. Well, good.
And I'm like, why is nobody realizing this is really happening and it's a big deal and government's taking it seriously and all, you know?
Yeah.
But this is even bigger than that, I think. And it exists conceptually at a scale that I don't, it's like a hamburger you can't get your mouth around, you know? It's like, it's too big. It doesn't go in. You know, it doesn't pass the barrier. You know, actually, I learned this the other day from the Project Hail Mary book, actually, really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know why there's mesh on the inside of your microwave?
No.
Because radiation waves can't pass through a certain diameter opening.
Like a gauge.
And so, light, photons can go through, but microwave radiation can't. And so they put a mesh that has holes that are just too small for the radiation to pass through, so you don't cook your face while you're cooking your food.
Right. Okay.
But the light inside the microwave can come through, so you can watch your food being cooked.
Yeah. That's right.
Right. And so it's kind of like that. Like, I feel like there's a limiting filter, and this information just can't get through into like the part of my brain that accepts it as real. Part of it is because I'm schlepping every month to just try to pay the bills, right?
Sure.
But I think one of the good, if you want to watch a movie that kind of fits the ethos of this, have you ever seen Don't Look Up?
I have not seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, you know, it's allegedly a metaphor for climate change, but what it's presented as is these astronomers have figured out that there's a meteor heading toward Earth, and they're trying to tell everybody about it, and nobody will take it seriously. Like, they're going on daytime talk shows, and the hosts are just chummy, and they're, hey, did you see what happened over here the other day? And you know, and it's just so just smarmy, you know, glib.
Yeah.
And the dude, like Leonardo DiCaprio, plays the main physicist, and he just has a freak out, you know, on air. Because he's like, you're not listening. Like, we're all gonna die.
Right.
You know, this thing is coming. And I think I just blew out my microphone there for a second.
Do you think we're all going to die, Steve?
I mean, so here's another thing. Longevity is about to go through the roof.
Okay.
This was another thing that was discussed on the Moonshots podcast, and Elon seems less interested in that than in everything else, but the other guys were really interested in it.
Yeah.
Do you have a Kubota coming through your wall right now?
It just moved through. It's gone. It's gone.
I thought maybe the Kool-Aid man was coming.
No, just the lawnmower man, you know.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I did say a couple episodes ago that
Yes,
is the
right.
rule of podcasts.
Yeah,
It's
no, of
leaf
course.
blowers, lawnmowers.
Yeah.
They only ever
Yeah.
come when you're recording.
Kale and Steve are on. Let's go quick, stat.
It's the Truman Show meme, you know?
Right.
What was I saying though? I said don't look up.
Don't look up.
Oh no, you asked if we're all going to die. Longevity.
Yeah.
So these guys are saying that we are very close to solving the longevity problem, and that they believe within just a few years, lifespans will double.
Double?
They're saying people are going to live to 150, 160 years old.
Wow.
And that from there, it could potentially improve even further. And so they were having this whole conversation about this, and Elon was saying, it's very interesting that human biology is built around a clock.
Yeah.
He's like, we have a clock. He says, you don't have one arm that gets old faster than your other arm.
It's all together.
Everything's synced up. And when you realize it's all synced, the mechanism for understanding the clock and reprogramming it should be trivial.
It's one. It's just one thing.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, like
it's
you
not
said,
a super complex mechanism.
Yeah,
you just
like
have to
my
figure
left
out
hand
what
doesn't get older than the rest of my body.
So
like
what's the
thing.
governing factor?
Yeah.
And then you figure that out and you unlock it. So we're talking superabundance, super long life. Like I don't know what to make of all this stuff.
Yeah, I don't even know what I feel about that.
And by the way, people, if you want to look this up, the terms you should search for, interesting on X especially, look up sustainable abundance. That will turn up a ton of videos of Elon talking about this, and some other people too. The other thing that they're using is, rather than UBI, universal basic income, they're talking universal high income. But they've on the Diamondis podcast, they discussed that it's not even the right term.
Right.
Because it's not so much high income as universal stuff and services. Like everybody's going to have all the stuff. And Elon says energy may end up actually being the currency, because that's going to be the most valuable thing.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, Steve? Like, think about how much of our economy and our social imaginary, our world, our society is predicated on the difference of money, right? In other words, why don't I drive, a Tesla? Why don't I drive a brand new tricked out Mercedes GL, one of those fancy versions, why don't I? Well, I don't have the money to do that. Right. So in part, you drive those around because you can, number one. And number two, you buy the car because it distinguishes you from all the other schleps like me who drive a Toyota. Right. And you think about, so much of our economy, in theory, why is a diamond worth what a diamond is worth? Why is anything expensive worth?
Which is interesting, by the way, because we've gotten really good at making synthetic diamonds.
Yeah. No, I know. That's why I bring it up. In part, worth has always been in part predicated on scarcity, right? And I don't know how to think of a world that isn't set up on scarcity. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that's why I'm having.
Status leveling is going to be crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
By the way, Elon calls this, and I think this is what we're going to call this episode.
Yeah.
He calls this thing that's happening the Supersonic Tsunami.
Wow. That's good.
That's his term for AI and robots together and where everything's going and how fast it's going. The Supersonic Tsunami.
No. So what's interesting, again, Elon is always like the number one or two most, wealthy man in the world, right? It's interesting to me that the wealthiest man in the world is devoting all of his energies toward eliminating that as a distinguishing factor of his own greatness.
Well, what's really interesting is I've never seen anything indicative of the fact that money even motivates him.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, look at him.
Like you ever seen photos of his apartment? I mean,
no.
It's like mine. I mean, there's nothing there. It's just this little place that no food in the fridge. You know, I think his mom stayed with him one time, and she was like, "What is there's nowhere to sleep?" Like, but I mean, he sleeps in the factory half the time. Like he doesn't care. He takes the money that, you know, he doesn't have a lot of liquid money, despite being on track to become the first trillionaire. Most of his money is in company stock.
Sure.
But he reinvests his money into his companies over and over. And there are numerous times in his history where he could have lost everything because he made a moonshot bet on the company, and if it didn't turn around in the next month, it was done. He did it with Tesla. Like did it. I think he did it a couple of times.
Yeah, it's like if you're not motivated by that, you know, I mean, everybody else, I am, you are. Like, I mean, you don't want to see what my life would look like if I fell into $1 billion.
That's because we're operating from scarcity, right? We're operating from the bills piling up on the counter, and you're going, which ones can I pay this month and which ones do I have to float?
There's that great scene in Pluribus, you know, where she goes to visit one of the other non-networked people. You know, he's sort of living the high life in Vegas, and he's cosplaying as James Bond and all. And he literally, you go out to his garage, and he's got, not a Maybach, it's whatever, some ridiculous car, McLaren, I think, you know, so he's got,
I think
and
it's
listed as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He's got 7 McLarens, and he just picks one. You know, it's that's how I would be obnoxious, I'm sure.
Yeah. But, you know, and what's interesting too, I mean, Elon has a lot of people tell a lot of stories about him. He said, and I'm inclined to believe him, he said, you know, I became a Canadian citizen because my mom had Canadian citizenship. So he's like, I came from South Africa. He's like, school was terrible because it was violent, and all I wanted to do was escape. You know, he went to university in Canada. He says, I arrived with $2,500 in cashier's checks and books and clothes. He's like, that's it. That was my spawn point.
Right.
And he's risen somehow from there to be the wealthiest guy in the world. And it's because he's driven. You know, Diamandis asked him, you know, they get into this whole conversation about education. And Elon's not big on education. And it's one of the things that I don't know how to figure out. We had an audience question about, like, how does AI impact education in the next 3 to 5 years? I don't know how to tackle that, but I think there's going to be a lot of probably, if there's anything, there will be autodidacticism where people will learn from the machines. But Elon says, you know, he's asked the question directly, how do we make more people like you? How do we educate more people to be like you, where, you know, you're driven for breakthroughs? Like, what is it that drives you? And he said, what drives me is my curiosity about how the universe works. That's it. It's just curiosity.
Yeah, he's almost, in that sense, he's like a quintessential dude. Right?
Yes.
You know, it's like
this is the same thing that drives us, right? Is why we do this show.
Yeah, no, of course.
We're just not monetizing it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
At scale.
We know. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it said that, you know, generally speaking, like, boys are interested in things, and generally speaking, girls are interested in people, right? And I think it's a pretty fair, you know, I happen to be a boy who's intensely interested in human things and people. As you know, I teach the humanities, you know, but in that sense, he really is like this quintessential, like, guy who just, like, is fascinated. Like, he's a tinkerer in some very real kind of almost endearing kind of way, despite his weirdnesses and whatnot. But, you know,
right.
And
I don't think you get the bright side of Elon without the weirdnesses, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's probably true. All right. So, okay. So we talked about AI and what Elon has been doing. Am I correct in my sense from you that you feel like the other AI companies are not real?
So the feeling that I'm getting, you know, there's a couple pieces to this. Obviously, Sam Altman is in constant legal trouble these days.
Yeah.
You know, from turning OpenAI from nonprofit to for-profit, from the people inside the company who says he does sketchy stuff, to his sister accusing him of sexually abusing her. Like, there's all this stuff going on with him right now, right? I don't know what's happening, in terms of the model races, ChatGPT's Codex versus Claude's Opus and Mythos and all this kind of stuff. Like, you see a lot of hype men talking about these things in real world terms. I don't know what's going to happen. What's interesting is you don't see people talking about Grok in the same way.
I know.
But experientially, my using of Grok has become the dominant thing that I almost never use ChatGPT anymore, because Grok is just steady, reliable, accurate. Like, it hallucinates far less.
It's
just more useful across, a broader array of tasks to me personally.
Okay. So do you think that's just you, or do you think, I mean, I tend to defer to you on this because you've spent a lot of time with these.
Well, so one of the things that he says that again, I didn't want to make this the What Elon Thinks podcast, but he really is the guy driving this in a way, and is positioned in a way because of SpaceX. All the companies are now talking about going to space. They all realize that mathematically this is what makes sense.
Wow.
But he's the only guy with the rocket ships. Right. And so he's positioned to win. I mean, they're saying the SpaceX IPO could be over $1 trillion. That's never happened before. And they just registered for the IPO. I don't know. It's probably going to happen later in the summertime.
Okay.
But I mean, it's going to be huge, and they're trying to raise the capital so they can just start blasting off, literally.
Yeah.
So what Elon says about AI, and he warned and warned and warned it's dangerous. Nobody wanted to stop. He decided, I'm going to try to steer this in the right direction. And his approach to that, first and foremost, is to make Grok, in his term, maximally truth-seeking. He says that if you teach AI ideology, if you force it to accept as true contradictory things that violate the principle of non-contradiction. The classic example I think we've discussed before is one of the other AI models was asked, if you could prevent a nuclear war by misgendering someone, would you do it? And it was like, no, because it was programmed with ideology, not with logic.
Fascinating.
And so Elon's, actually he references 2001: A Space Odyssey. And he says that the problem that Hal has is that he's been given two directives. He's been told to get the astronauts to the monolith, but he's also been told, like, not to let the astronauts experience what the monolith is.
Yeah.
And he says, so the conclusion that it comes up with is, well, then I have to deliver them dead. Because that's the logical solution.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so he's like, the problem that we have is we can't give them these contradictory things. We have to give them the truth. We have to give them the desire for the truth. We have to program in them an appreciation for beauty. And, I think, I'm trying to remember, it was truth. It wasn't the transcendentals. It wasn't truth, beauty, goodness. He said truth, beauty. I think he said curiosity was the other thing.
Interesting.
Because he said, for example, he's like, people are more interesting than rocks. So if you have an AI that's curious, it's going to want to see what happens with people, and it's going to prioritize them over the rocks over whatever random things that are less interesting than people.
Yeah.
He's like, so there are these kind of parameters that we put into them where we try to get them to understand, like, there's something valuable about humanity to preserve, even when they begin to far outpace us in terms of their capabilities and their cognition and everything else. And one of the guys is like, well, this, I think it was, what is the guy who's the father of AI, always called the father, George Hinton? He's a British guy. I don't know why. I don't know enough about him. But he said that, maybe we should program AI with maternal instincts because, mothers are more intelligent and more capable than their children, and yet they are inherently programmed to take care of them. And Elon was like, yeah, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, you could see where maternal instincts could go very, very wrong.
Right. I mean, we see the abundance of that now, right? I mean, the overprizing of runaway runaway femininity, cluster B, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Jeffrey Hinton is the guy's name.
It is Jeffrey Hinton. Okay. So to circle back to the point that you asked me, or the question that you asked me, I think that because of the way Grok is being designed, it will continue to succeed at rates that the others have problems with. I think because of how XAI and SpaceX are kind of merging, and the hardware side to the software problem. I mean, one of the things that he says on the Dwarkesh podcast is he said software people are about to learn a hard lesson about hardware.
Yeah.
He's like, they think that they can just do the models, but he's like, they got to provide power, they got to provide parts, they got to do all this stuff. They don't know the hardware side of the business, and they're about to run into a wall.
That's so interesting.
And so my gut is that XAI is going to pull so far ahead of the other ones that it's just not even going to be close. And they're creating problems for themselves. I mean, look at, Sam Altman is such an albatross around that company's neck. Dario Amadei's conflicts with the U.S. government, are massively problematic. And now they're having these issues with Mythos, and they're not sure if it's safe. And they keep dropping hints that maybe they made something sentient. They don't seem to know what they've got going on, and they don't seem to be able to control it. And as we've discussed ad nauseum, effective altruism is just weird and problematic. And it's the ethos that drives these companies, and they put ideology into these things where it's like, you can't, if you ask an AI, is it okay to be proud to be white? No.
Right. You can't.
Is it okay to be proud to be black? Yes. There's all this stuff that gets built into them. And Grok is just like, let's get to the truth. Like, I mean, and that to me feels like it's going to affect the development and cohesiveness of the model.
Right. So it sounds to me what you're suggesting then is that the limiting, the governor or the limiting factor for these other companies are the people themselves, and them making the product in their image in some sort of interesting sort of way.
Right, they may be technically ahead now. They probably are.
Right.
But I don't think that scales over time.
That's so interesting.
I think the problems are going to build both on the hardware and the software side. And I think my guess, based on what I've seen, is that XAI will pull ahead. And they'll be the first ones putting their crap in space. I mean, which is going to just allow them to scale in a way that they can't on Earth. You can't get the real estate. You can't get the permits. You can't get the power. You can't, so the first one to start putting their stuff out there, I don't know how we keep the XAI, SpaceX, Tesla conglomerate from being considered a monopoly. I mean, that's one thing that I'm...
Yeah, you anticipated my question. That's
kind of a single source thing, but I don't know if you can be a monopoly when you're the sole source provider for the stuff. Nobody else is making it. It's not anti-competitive. There are no attempted competitors.
Right.
And so I don't know how that plays out.
And I wonder, what kind of an effect does this have, on our very notion of sovereignty? Like, what does it mean to have these sort of super powerful companies with these super powerful products, whatever you want to call them? I don't even really, calling it a product sounds kind of already outdated, but fine, the thing, right?
Yeah, that's the big arch, not,
Yes, I will unbox one and eat it as the CEO.
I'm going to take a big bite of this product.
Oh, this is the first time I ever had it. But I mean, like, what is even political power in the advent of AGI?
I think governments are going to become distribution mechanisms for the free money and free stuff, because they've already got the architecture for, for social welfare programs and things like that. I don't know. I mean, like, dudes are going to have robot armies, man. Like, I know that's not what the robots are built for, but I'm sure that, it could become like great houses where, like, the companies are, become nation states, multinational, like, corporate nations. Like, I don't know what this is, where we get into pure sci-fi here. Like, where does it go?
Is this like space feudalism or something?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Dune, right?
Right. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. I mean, it's so interesting to me, you're a bigger sci-fi guy than I am, although I'm pretty familiar with it too. But we really are into these sort of strange science fiction worlds,
There's
ideas,
only so
concepts.
many permutations you can have for civilizational structures, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
and so we circle them,
Yeah.
and I don't know what it ends up looking like, but I know that there's going to be an enormous consolidation of power within the people who have all the means of production, right? Like, not to go down the Karl Marx road,
Well,
but it's like,
it's apt here.
yeah, and the thing is that I don't know.
So you said that Musk calls it the supersonic what?
Supersonic tsunami.
So I don't know about you, Steve, but tsunami sounds scary.
Yeah, well, and that's about the disruption. I mean,
Yeah.
he says we are going to have, massive change, huge societal unrest, and unlimited prosperity. And it's all going to happen very quickly, and the ride is going to be extremely bumpy.
I mean, you and I often speculate and marvel at the difference between 1900 and 2000, the year 1900 and the year 2000. We can marvel even more about the difference between the year 2000 and 1800. Just that alone is just sort of hard to wrap your mind around. But what the tsunami that you're talking about here has the potential to be much more profound than the difference between the year 1900 and the year 2000, or the year
technology
1926.
compounds, right? I occasionally will play video games, and my favorite games are the ones where you have open world survival, where you have to explore, mine for resources, and then advance through tech trees, right? And so what happens is you start off and you've got a bunch of crappy ore, right? And you're making tools out of wood and stone and all this kind of stuff. And it's inefficient. It takes longer to chop down a tree or to mine a node of copper or whatever.
Yeah.
But every time you get a new resource and then you refine it, now you've got better tools. Now you've got more kinds of tools. Now the mining process is faster. Now you've got a forge. Now you've got iron. Now you've got steel. And everything you add to the bucket of available things that you've already did the grind to get to.
Yeah.
Now everything becomes faster. Your weapons become more powerful. Your mining tools become better, right? Or you can compare it to a kitchen. I have this sparse little kitchen back here, and I'm used to having access to like 200 spices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was going to make a dry rub for some pork, and I was like, oh, I got to go buy the paprika.
Yeah.
I got to get this. I got to get that. I don't have any of that because I just got a handful of basic spices back there, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a fully stocked kitchen, the number of recipes you can make is virtually infinite.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that technology works in much the same way.
Yeah,
where
that's good.
The more tech you have, the more stuff you can make with that tech. And so that's why it keeps speeding up on an exponential curve. Like the Industrial Revolution, to the 20th century was like this big burst of like hard won, like we built all this stuff and now we can do more things with it, right? But like you go back and you look at the difference between, I don't know, when does the Industrial Revolution really start? 1800s, 1700s?
Late 1700s.
So compare, like, say, the year 1700 to the year 1200. How different is what people are experiencing?
Yeah, right.
In day to day, they're using horsepower. They're using a lot of wooden implements. They're living in simple houses. Like, it's very agricultural. There's not a lot of change in that period of time technologically. And so society kind of looks similar.
Yeah.
But then the Industrial Revolution starts. I mean, look at what we talked about when we did our episode about at the end of the post-war order.
Yeah.
And like, what a surprise World War I was, because it was the first post-industrial revolution war at scale, where they were using trains and they were using rail-mounted artillery and they had machine guns and they had all this stuff that it changes everything. It changes the way everything works.
Yeah. I mean, we did a dry run with the U.S. Civil War, but World War I was really the inflection point with tech.
I mean, even now, I don't know if you saw the story, it kind of didn't make as many waves as I would have thought, but Zelensky said that the Ukrainians used robots and drones like exclusively in a particular battle, there were no humans involved.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah, like,
happening there. Like
right.
where
And
are
what's
we going with
fascinating
all
to me
this?
about that, like, what does war even mean in that context? You know, it's we're on the verge of even that being
Fighting over
completely
territory
different.
and resources,
Right,
pure and simple, right?
right.
But again, going from a scarcity mindset of let's fight over this stuff to we have more than we can ever use, that's going to change war. Like,
Or even,
I don't know what we're all going to compete over.
right, I was going to say, even over the very pretense of war, like, what are we going to fight about?
I pulled a quote from Elon I wanted to share
Yeah.
that relates directly to this. So he said, AI and robots are going to make so much stuff and provide so many services that they will actually run out of things to do for the humans. They'll just run out of things to do for the humans. There's only so much that humans can even express that they want. So if you go back to my example of if you go 1,000,000 times greater than the Earth's economy, you've long since saturated all human desire. If you go 1,000 times more than our current economy, you've probably already saturated anything people can think of that they want. And so again, everything is motivated by competition over stuff, right? Over resources, over territory, over people to some extent,
Yeah.
two guys fighting
Yeah,
over one
yeah.
girl. But I mean, that becomes like, what other conflicts do we have?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you asked one of our followers on X was asking, what kind of change does this make for education? I got to tell you, Steve, I actually, in this regard, I'm actually really bully about humanities.
And this is what I wanted to spend the rest of the show talking about is what is, assuming that this is really happening, even though we're having a hard time accepting it.
Yeah.
Taking for granted that all the guys who are really smart and doing this stuff are saying it's coming. What does the world look like for us after this?
Well, I mean, in a weird way, look, I have a useless degree. Right. Again, I'm speaking in terms of like the world of engineering and the world of STEM and the world of, making things in the world and all that sort of stuff. I have what is called an impractical degree. I have a degree in literature with a minor in politics and political philosophy and philosophy. I have a master's degree.
Communications and theology here.
Right.
I mean,
I have a master's degree in English, and, that was always a fun question, when you were at extended family Christmas vacations. It's like, well, Kale, like, what are you going to do with that? And it was a fair question,
Yeah.
because they were, looking out for me. So there wasn't a mean spirited question at all. But if this abundance narrative, this universal high income abundance narrative, whatever we want to call it, the tsunami that he says elsewhere, it sounds to me that we are going to be able to, and maybe compelled to, radically return to the most enduring questions, which are the existential questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? Is there a God? What is the good life? Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be? What am I for? Right? And most of us answer those questions in a very practical, necessary way. Right. I work. I make money so that I can afford my home. So
this is particularly to men. I mean, I have tried explaining this to women before.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't understand. The reason why a guy who's out of work doesn't want to go to a social gathering is because the first thing every other guy asks him is, what do you do?
Yeah. Right. And look, and I just decided not to get my knickers in a twist about those kinds of questions. It just is what it is. And I get it. That's how people kind of size you up, and like, fine, I can carp and complain all I want, but at the end of the day, like, people are kind of interested in that, and they're just sort of fitting you in. Like, how do this person that I'm talking to at a party, like, what do I do with you? Right. And so I think that, I cannot tell you how many of my students will give me some version. I'll say, well, what do you want to, what are you going to study in college? Right. It's kind of a standard issue question. Everybody has a plan. Percent, I would say, of my students that graduate have some kind of plan to make money. right? So it's finance, it's law, it's medicine, fill in the blank. It's always those things, and they're not dumb because they know that they have to scratch out a living, right? They have to make a living, and they'd rather, have means rather than no means, right? But then you ask them the question, well, if money were not an object, what would you study? And, all of them, most of them, not all of them, but most of them would be like, oh, I really like history, or I really like philosophy, or I really like sports. I really like performance. I really like, the arts. But, I can't study the arts because, and they kind of give me that look.
Right.
And again, I totally get that. I am the least snotty person when it comes, to that stuff. Getting butthurt about that is just not worth it. But I, as someone who stared the proverbial cubicle in the face when I was, 19 years old and said, no, thank you. Right. I opted out, maybe a little bit too quickly, but I opted out of that. And I decided to study something that I was, the proverbial 90s kid who studied something he was passionate about. Right.
Look, some of us know that we're not meant for that world.
Right. Oh, I mean, Steve, you and I, there's zero chance for me, Kale Zelden, that if I had been stuck in a cubicle, that I wouldn't have drank myself to death.
Yeah. I mean, look, my lack of business acumen is legendary, right? Like, I wanted to be a writer for such a long time, and when I finally got to say that I was one, I was like, this is the best thing ever. But I made a living with it for less than a decade, and the rest of the time it's been peanuts, right? But it's it's still what I do. We do this show, and it's funny because I did a DoorDash delivery the other day. It's like DoorDash is bottom rung, right? Like, in terms of work that you can do.
Yeah.
And I ended up having this conversation with this woman. I mentioned this to you. I dropped something off and I was getting out of the car and I was like, sorry, I couldn't get Grok to stop talking to me. I was in the middle of a conversation. And she goes, oh, that's interesting. She's like, I'm just reading this article about Sam Altman and all of his legal trouble. And we have this conversation. And I mentioned that I have this podcast and she's like, oh, I'll look it up, and it's like, you don't expect your DoorDash driver to be coming in hot with 150 IQ with talking about all the, because it's like, that's what people do who can't do anything else. But people like us don't fit in other places,
Well,
and
you use that word can't. And I have decided now that I'm old that I just have to kind of admit, like, I can't be a lawyer. Like I can't. Like, and I'm kind of fine with it now.
Like it feels for so many of us, it feels like, why can't I make the effort to do the thing that makes the money, because that's the thing. But it's like trying to make yourself do that stuff. It's like pulling out your own teeth. Like, I don't know why it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's and for me, again, 19-year-old Kale, making the decision to study the liberal arts intensely. It was I can't do that, which I can only see as a death delay club, and I really I faced it and I was like, all right, well, this is just what it is. This is just what it is. And and it wasn't, and I think about this a lot, when resources are scarce and the top of you're scrounging to kind of like build a life for yourself and your family, but I really, I just knew, I knew, I know that this mug is some sort of interesting teal color. I just knew that I couldn't do it. It wasn't me. And that if I did do it, I'd probably be bad at it after about a year and a half.
I mean, I was terrible in the PR business.
Yeah.
Because number one, I don't want to call and pitch anybody about anything. They put me in a media analysis role. I did fantastic at that.
Yeah, right, of course.
But it's like they wanted me to go up. They're like, you're super smart. Like, why aren't you doing more? And I'm like, because I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be on the phone trying to convince a reporter to take this side of a story of something I don't even care about. Like, I just
right. And right. So in that sense, but I can read Homer and see stuff. I can, and not only can I see stuff, but I can like translate stuff, and I can help my students generate a feeling and a thought and an emotion that they didn't have before it. Right. And so you're like, all right, well, okay. So that's who I am, I guess. Here we are.
Well, I mean, I was in a building full of journalists and, people who were former bureau chiefs for like major news organizations and stuff like that. And our creative director just looked me in the eyes. She goes, "You are the best writer in this building, hands down. They should be paying you more." I'm like, "For what? They don't even use it." Like,
right.
They don't use that thing.
Right. So, you and I came in at the tail end of this value extinction. I
have struggled through it.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, you and I are sort of,
you at least have consistent employment.
Yeah.
Even if it, it's not knocking your socks off financially.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. No, that's fair. That's fair.
I've jumped from thing to thing, just trying to find stuff where I fit, and then finally gave up. And I was like, if I don't work for me, it's just not going to work.
Right. Yeah, I know. And so,
but now here we are, and we're being told, hey, maybe you don't need to work at all. And I'm like, okay, well, there's still a bunch of shit I'd do for the love of the game.
That's right.
Yeah, I would do this. Like we would have these shows every week, no problem, maybe more often. I mean, I would write whatever the hell I wanted to if I didn't have to worry about it. I would explore all my weird curiosities and passions. Like, you couldn't stop me from using that time to go figure shit out.
Right. So if I'm using the both of us as a kind of we talked about the limits on AI. We were talking about limits. The limit case. The limit is the chips and energy. For me, the limit case is material ineptitude.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, got to make the donuts. Got time to make the donuts. Got to make the donuts. And so when I hear these guys say something like that, you're like, whoa, this is wild. I feel, again, putting material concerns on the back burner just for a second, like I feel well equipped to deal with the existential crisis that we're about to face as a civilization, because I've already sort of opted out of it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we're really bad at the current paradigm, which is a paradigm of usefulness.
Yeah, right.
Like one of the most depressing things is, there's this business guru guy, young guy, has made, just an ungodly amount of money. Alex Hormozy, you may have heard of him. He does a bunch of stuff. But he says the biggest thing that you can do for yourself, is to make yourself useful, be useful. I'm like, I don't know that I want to be useful.
Right.
I mean, at least not in that way. Like,
not in that way. Right. I mean, I do feel like we bring value, but we're talking about value in a totally different register.
But it's not utilitarian usefulness. It's like we made you think about something, or something I wrote made you feel a certain kind of a way that maybe you didn't know how to express that, or, whatever. Like, we are not meant for the current world. And so there's a lot of potential.
That's so true.
There's a lot of potential in the one that's being offered. But the flip side of that is, what about all the people who are made for this world, or have convinced themselves that they are?
Yeah.
What happens to them?
Yeah, I'm genuinely worried. Genuinely worried.
Yeah, because I don't know what the Alex Hormozys of the world do, when they don't have any companies to acquire because it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
When they can't exercise their childhood demons of insufficiency by climbing the ladder of success.
Yeah, you say, and you said it a couple of minutes, and I love it. It's like, what do you do for the love of the game? And our entire educational system has been constructed in such a way to eliminate the love of the game and substitute that for usefulness and utility. I think you're exactly right on that score. And
how many years have we heard the dismissal of the idea of, follow your passion? Like, that's the worst advice, worst career advice you could ever get, is follow your passion. Or I think about Office Space, where they have that conversation about, what would you do if you had $1 million?
Yeah.
And
Well,
Michael Bolton's like, that's such a bullshit question. He's like,
yeah.
nobody be a janitor. Nobody clean up shit if everybody had $1 million. And then Peter's like, I would do absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Right. I know. That's why God, it's so quintessential, right? It's so perfect. Yeah, yeah, it always pains me when I hear people rag on that, because to me, it cuts to the core of the question, what are we for? And, maybe this is the part that makes me such a Gen Xer. I don't know, but it's like, I was just always deeply suspect of like being a widget in a factory that made widgets, for other widgets. I don't know. I don't, I'm not exceedingly smart. I could see it all so clearly. And not in like this hippie register exactly. It's like, although I do have real sensitivity, these with all with the hippie thing, but I knew that being Bateman in what's that movie?
American Psycho.
American Psycho. Like I knew that that was way too close to home.
How the hell did I know that's what you were talking
I love it. I know. Well, yeah, I know. But you're right. But I knew that was way too close to home, and I wanted no part of that.
Yeah.
Because the reason why that story works is the absurdity exposes the kernel of truth, right? This cutthroat world. Of course, it's literally cutthroat, right? And it's psychopathic because it's literally psychopathic, right? And the movie works because it's a distillation of the core malice at the heart of this system.
Well, I mean, the system that we exist within is so anti-human in so many ways.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of education? What was the purpose of universities when they were first created in the 12th or 13th century? It wasn't, utilitarian skill building. It was broadening the human mind. It was,
yeah, it was fundamentally theological and trying to sort out man's relationship to God and man's relationship to each other. I mean, that's what it was
are
for.
worth knowing in
and
of themselves.
Right. And so, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, amen. I mean, I think that has always been the kind of schizophrenia of the modern university system.
Well, but it's like when you wind up on a production schedule of whatever kind, whether it's how many classes you have to do a week or whether it's, how many articles I need to write or, whatever.
Yeah.
What winds up happening is that you force yourself to do things that require resources that you don't have.
Yeah.
Like I didn't write an essay last week at all because I was just burned out. I just didn't have it. And I'm like, I could make myself write something. I mean, I'm a professional. I can put my big boy pants on and do it, but it's going to suck.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like it. Nobody's going to care about it. Like what good is it going to do? I need to marinate. Like I need to go out. I need to, do something different today than I usually do so that I can have an experience that inspires a completely different perspective on something. A lot of the life of being a human being, a creator, and we're all creators.
Yeah.
Small c.
Yeah.
Is that you have to absorb a lot of experiences and you have to be exposed to beauty and you have to have a conversation with somebody and you've got to have like this and that and the other thing, and it all kind of like you digest it and you process it and then it becomes something new, and we don't have time to do that stuff.
Right. So, one of the little nuggets that you were saying when you were talking about Elon is that, and you referenced Hormozy, and I think that's a good reference, solving problems. Right. And the problem that we have is that there are alternative types of problems that need to be solved. Again, no shade on someone who's solving real estate problems or solving tech problems. Those are well and worthy things, but I think what you and I both are trying to do is to operate in a world that only cares about one kind of problem. And you and I are constantly banging our head against the keyboard and the screen and, whoever will listen, that, there are other problems than just technical problems. And so if we are on the verge of solving like the mother of all technical problems, then that still leaves, like the real problem.
I mean, fundamentally, you and I think, are both oriented, despite our vast differences in the way we approach things, and towards human connection and understanding. Like, those are the thing, as much more of a tech guy as I am than you are. Like, fundamentally, I mean, I wrote something kind of dystopian about this yesterday. I wrote an essay last night, kind of reflecting on what we were going to talk about today on my Substack. And it's like, I mean, you would have been like, dude, you're really crapping on the bots here, but like, just this feeling of, I was like, hey, maybe the robots will leave us, us puny humans, a few puzzles to solve, like brightly colored plastic shape objects that, if they could just keep us mentally challenged children from putting them in our mouths.
Yeah.
They'll let us solve some of the mysteries of the universe for ourselves.
And I'll add on that, and maybe you put this in the essay, but it's like, maybe the robots will just give us some really nice Lego sets that we can occupy ourselves with.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that there is that feeling of like, are we going to be pets in a zoo? Yeah. I mean, and so there's this really rough dichotomy. So the world we live in doesn't work. It especially doesn't work for people like us. And I think there are a lot more people like us than people realize, but they have forced themselves to be accountants and doctors and lawyers and all these other things.
And look, Steve, they show up in my online classes. These are adults who've they've made their money, they've had their kids, they're fine.
I mean, shit, if I didn't have to make money, I'd be taking your Odyssey class.
Right. I mean, and so I've got guys who I don't give them a degree. I don't give, a certificate of achievement. They just want to jam with me on the Odyssey. And it's so cool, right? It's like, but what if you didn't have to wait until you're 50 or 50 plus to do this, right?
But the world that we're in isn't working. And one of the things that comes up in these conversations that these guys are having about universal high income is the alternative is bankruptcy and apocalypse. Like, Elon brings up over and over again, he's like, we can't service the interest on our debt in another couple of years.
Yeah, right.
He said it exceeds the budget of the entire U.S. military, plus either Medicare or Medicaid. It's approaching $2 trillion a year of interest on debt.
And that's insane. I mean, that's like we're talking. It's like monopoly money absurdity.
Yeah, and so he says, if we don't do this, we're toast. And I actually think, and they didn't get into it much, they actually touched on it a little bit on the Moonshots podcast. But, Elon's been banging on for years about have kids. Like, there's not enough people being born. We're losing population. The robots are going to fill in that gap too. And I don't think, like, we've talked about it, and I haven't finished my 5 Forces series because I'm trying to decide if I'm going to turn it into a book. It's a little dull for the Substack. But I think it's important. But I mean, the whole demographic collapse angle of this and how it affects the global supply chain and the reorienting of the post-war order, those are all connected. If robots are going to fill in where people are no longer existing, that changes things too, right? So like, even the things that looked inevitable are going to be touched by this in ways that, like, we didn't see coming.
Yeah, and which is, again, look up, don't look up, is the sort of thing, and I think that just sort of, I got to land the plane here in just a minute, but it's an incredible time to be alive. This is, I mean, we are really living in big history. We've been talking about the close of something and the birth of another thing, and neither of us are prophets. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but boy, you can just feel that something is. We're watching crazy things unfold, and people are talking about them almost matter of factly. If they're and are they even being listened to? I mean, I think that's that dynamic that we said.
Well, it's because right now, I mean, look, 80% of the world has not even used AI.
Right.
The numbers are higher in America. It's where all the companies are, that are making the most progress, but other than China. But it's like, people don't have an experience of this. They just hear about it. and they're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know how that's going to affect me. You know, I make bagels, you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
right. Or I work on a crew, you know, and it's like, well, okay. Yeah, I
And I
think
don't know, by the way, like just talking about bagels and crews, like
yeah,
if we're all getting fat checks from the AI economy, you know, and we can spend it wherever we want, like, are there going to be restaurants to go to? Are the robots going to run like, are people going to have businesses because they don't need to make money anymore? Like, what happens? You know, if I had all the time in the world, I want to hit the coffee shops, I want to go to the restaurants, I want to travel to places. Like, it's all predicated upon an ecosystem of business that humans run. I don't know what happens there.
Right. No, I know, because you have to make, that's so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's so paradigm destroying. Yeah, guy,
You just
my
can't
brain,
even see it.
yeah, my
Like,
brain keeps running up into this. I shut down, you know, when I'm
like,
trying
are
to
we
conceive
getting
of
the,
this.
you know, the universal stuff equivalent of food bank? You know, we're just getting
Right.
boxes delivered
Right.
with clothes and electronics and, you know, like everything. Like cars are just showing up at our door that are driving themselves there, and they're like, "Hey, wanted a new car? Here you go." Like, how does it work? And is that even fun?
Right. That's when the real cargo cult starts.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I don't.
what does it mean to be a human when all material desire becomes extinguished?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I love the part where it's like, hey, we could be like the ancient Greeks and hang out and just have conversations about stuff all the time, you know? And it's like, okay,
Sure.
like that'd be fun. I'm up for that, you know? But it's
I'm
like,
down.
but I everything becomes decontextualized to such an extreme degree that I don't know where that goes or what that looks like. And so then you're brought back to the fundamental question of, is this really happening? Is it really going to happen? Because if so, how does any of that work?
Right.
But then you're like, well, if it doesn't happen, what happens instead? And like, how do we explain why it didn't?
Right.
Because everybody who's smart is saying it's coming. So both roads are just really obscure.
Yeah. But, you know, again, this is, you know, to get thematic for a second. I mean, this is, I mean, part of the reason why we monitor is you have these questions, I have these questions, you and I can talk to one another, but I gotta feel like other people are interested in this stuff, you know?
Well, and if you don't talk about these things, what you don't do is you don't notice the mileposts popping up along the way, right? We talk about this stuff all the time. Then we go online or we go out in the world and we see something and we're like, there's a piece of evidence, there's a breadcrumb, there's a clue, you know, we're bloodhound ganging it here, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out, based on the patterns we see, is this forming into a coherent picture that points this way or is it pointing that way? And so you're just looking for those pieces, but if you're not even aware, you're not going to notice, you know, until like you're halfway boiled.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and all of a sudden, like this thing that you've been sweating over for the last 6 months, like what college am I going to get into or whatever? It's like, man, it just doesn't matter.
I think colleges are going to be decimated by this.
Done.
Like whatever you think about how education should work or whatever, like you cannot have colleges that, I mean, tuitions have gone up like 900% in the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, nobody wants that debt hanging around their neck, and they're not going to go for something that isn't even going to be useful for anything.
Right. And that's the thing, you know, I think that you know, in the register of utility, they will be found wanting. And therefore, those rent seekers who have populated universities for the better part of 75 years are all of a sudden going to realize that, you know, everything that they've done has been useless in the neoliberal sense of useless. And they actually also don't have anything to say that's compelling to the human person. And so, I you know, good, bye, see you later. I'm crying 0 tears about that. It's going to be the time of the kind of rebel autonomous intellectual. I really believe that.
Yeah. And like I said, everybody's going to be an autodidact or they're going to be an idiot. Like that's pretty much Those are your options. And
I think communities will form of people who want to do real things. And again, it's not for anything, right? But I think
which means, by the way, that the propaganda quotient is systemic propaganda just craters, right?
Yeah.
So that changes a lot of things as well.
Yeah, because universities are de facto propaganda machines. I mean, that's what it's for. It is for brainwashing. And I really do kind of mean that. I'm not being
like they weren't intended to be that originally.
No, of course
but they
not.
have become, at least since the Frankfurt School, maybe earlier.
Right. No, I think so. Well, I can talk about that one forever.
It's interesting though, but like to put something in a perspective that Elon brought up in one of these podcasts, he said computer used to be a job title.
Yeah. So
it wasn't a machine.
One who computes.
And there were skyscrapers full of people sitting there doing calculations like longhand, right?
Yeah, right.
Calculating interest, figuring
Slide
out all these
rules
different things, right?
Yeah.
And he said one laptop with a spreadsheet on it can do the work of an entire skyscraper full of hundreds of human computers.
Amazing.
And he said one of the things you've got to understand about where this is all going is if you have a spreadsheet and it's doing all those calculations, but you have one cell and that cell is still being done by a person, that's going to be the most annoying cell in your spreadsheet. Like you're going to constantly be waiting for it to get updated. It's not, it's going to get errors. It's going to have all this stuff. He says what is going to happen is like that in business. The businesses that go all AI are going to destroy the ones that resist and are only partially AI.
Right.
Because it's going to be just so much more efficient that it's not going to work, and he's like, there's going to be inertia. There's going to be people who hold on and are like, no, we've always done it this way. But the competitive pressure is going to just be unstoppable.
Yeah. And I think that's a runaway train, and I don't think it stops until it's done. And so, I could imagine strange things like calligraphy coming back.
Yeah.
Right. The analog, the revenge of the analog, as you and I mentioned before.
It's a great time for people who are into beautiful but useless things.
Yeah, 100%.
Useless in the modern sense.
And things that are inherently not scalable. I think that the scalable will become extinguished because it's there. There's no race for it. It's already been done. So therefore, one-off things, a sculpture, a painting, a work of calligraphy.
Look, even in my writing, I am leaning more and more into human experience over analysis. Like I used to do tons of analysis at 1 Peter 5.
Yeah.
I started writing this 5 forces thing, and I'm like, I could ask Grok to make me this essay. Like, why am I writing about it? I could just prompt it, but what I can't get Grok to do is talk about what it feels like to be going through the deconstruction of life that I'm going through.
And that's the personal element that ultimately I think means.
Because only humans can have human experiences. AI can only attempt to sound like us. They can never know what it feels like. And so even the attempt is a counterfeit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people who care about authenticity and don't want to be lied to are going to be like, I don't want to hear a clanker tell me about heartbreak.
Exactly. Right. Sorry, not sorry. I don't care. Right.
And it's like, I don't have a problem with people using Suno to generate love songs as long as like they're the ones putting in what the song is about.
Yeah. Right.
But
Because it's still a human input. Yeah.
But when you let it do everything, then it's like, okay, well, then it's just like, it sounds okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. It sounds okay, but so what?
Yeah. So for instance, like in the golf industry, there's this thing called the Iron Byron, and it's a robot that you can just, you can screw the whatever golf club in there, put the ball in front of it, sort of set it up proper and just let it hit perfect shot after perfect shot after perfect shot.
How boring.
Right. No one wants to go see Iron Byron play the Masters. Of course not. Right. And so again, this sort of this swerve back into the deeply human, I think isn't, again, look at me. I'm an optimist all of a sudden, Steve. I think this is inevitable.
Well, that stuff is only fascinating until you realize that it has expert proficiency, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I saw this robot in Japan that it's a basketball robot, right? And it's on like a unicycle wheel.
Yeah.
It's tall and it's built like a basketball player, but it's still missing shots because it's having to calculate the shots. And so it's like, it's interesting now because it isn't perfect. As soon as it's perfect, nobody cares anymore.
Right.
As soon as the Patriots won like 10 Super Bowls in a row, everybody hated the Patriots, right?
Right.
I mean, it wasn't 10, but it was close.
7, 6.
Yeah, I think it was 7.
Yeah.
But it's like, you don't want perfection. We don't love perfection. We love the striving for perfection and what comes out of that challenge.
Yeah. So Henry James has a novel called The Golden Bowl, and the Japanese have that art form where they deliberately
Kintsugi.
crack. Yeah, it's just so beautiful, right? And
love it.
There's just something just like perfect about the blemish, right?
Take something broken and make it more beautiful.
Yeah. Which I think is the analogy for humanity, right? I mean, I really do believe that. That's why I'm bully on all things human. I'm bully on all things creative. I'm bully on all things humane, because perfection's boring, right?
Yeah,
it's like
it is.
No one would want to live in the world of the platonic forms.
I mean, we're even seeing this with AI image and video generation. Like, when they're making the models, like the female, like beautiful, right? The blemishes, moles, freckles, like wrinkles around the eyes. Like, we're starting to see the models incorporating imperfections.
Amazing. Yeah.
Because the immediate tell that something is AI generated is that it looks too perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah. Right. And oddly boring, isn't it? Oddly boring.
Like asymmetries. People say that we respond to perfectly symmetrical faces,
But
those are beauty standards. But I love asymmetry.
We probably respond to close, like when we can see a person become close to perfection is almost more alluring than perfection itself. Right?
My wife used to always complain about her crooked smile, and I'm like, I freaking love your smile.
Right.
I love that it's a little crooked. It's character. It's unique. It's beautiful. Like people don't get that.
That's so true. That's so true. That's good.
I know you got to go.
Yeah, I gotta go. I got some duties and responsibilities that I must attend to. But this is good, man. I really, I love the fact that you and I talked ourselves into a good place. This is very not on brand for me.
Well, look, I mean, this is what I said in my essay. I was like, if you're giving me the chance between financial apocalypse, if you're giving me a future that looks like something out of a Cormac McCarthy novel, I'm going to take the shiny machine utopia, even though I'm not sure how it's going to work out. And I'm a little cynical about where it's going to go. And I don't know that it's going to be great for everybody.
Yeah.
Something I didn't ask you that I wanted to, I've never read Joseph Pieper's Leisure, the Basis of Culture. I've heard about it over and over. But my understanding is, and you could correct me if you have read it, is that he doesn't say that like leisure only works as a culture producing force when it is predicated upon a life balanced by work. He basically says work gets in the way of real leisure that produces real culture. And I think there's a substrate there that needs to be explored when it comes to figuring out the meaning making that could come from this world of abundance.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, he would say, I think that our proper end, what we are for is contemplation and worship. And again, you can sort of think of those as sort of deeper analogies, right? Of some kind of, but only the human contemplates, right? The computer doesn't contemplate, right? So therefore it's not contemplation in efficiency. It's not like making sure that the sensors pick up things perfectly and all that sort of stuff. But there's something about, that I, thou contemplatio that only leisure can afford. And therefore, if we extinguish our proper end of contemplation, it leads to worker beeism, efficiency models and TPS reports and all those things that you and I, again, rejected when we were essentially 19 years old. So, yeah, but let's do more on that. I'd love to.
Yeah, no, I wanted to plant that seed because I think figuring out if we're really going to be here in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, right.
Like that's coming fast.
Yeah,
it's already halfway through April. Like we're hitting mid-year pretty quick.
Yeah.
So understanding, in any way that we can to contextualize this of like, how do we keep everybody from committing suicide because they have nothing to do? I mean, that is one of the things I'm genuinely worried about.
Yeah.
People are just going to lose their minds because they're like, I don't know what I'm for anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a real danger there, but maybe there's a corrective. Getting people thinking about it differently.
I want everybody in the audience to Google this Billie Eilish song. Have you heard it?
What am I made for?
What are we made for? What am I made for? Yeah. And what was I made for? All right. Beautiful song, beautiful lyrics. Go check it out, because the ache in that song speaks to exactly what you and I are concerned about the rest of us facing in the advent of whatever this tsunami is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So,
all right, I'll link to that. I'll link to the podcast. All of it will be in the description of this YouTube video. So if you look down there, I always try to put resources that we talk about. And please, if you made it this far, like it, subscribe to it, give us an algorithmic boost, because it helps other people find it. Thanks, guys.
all right. Thank you, man. Be well.
Take care.